Hey everyone, just for the recording and live stream, we're just gonna give it a couple more minutes for people to join. Hi everyone, I see a couple people in the meeting so far. We're just gonna give it a couple more minutes for some other people to join before we get started. So we'll just give it until 5:35 and then we'll just get started here. Okay, it's 5:35. Hopefully we'll have a few more people joining us. Hopefully we didn't lose them to the beautiful weather this evening. But this, as a reminder, this is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So you can also check back on PlanRV's YouTube channel to watch the recording. So I will get started now. Tonight, we're just going to take a high-level look at the draft report for the West Broad Street BRT corridor analysis. My name is Dan Mata. I'm a transportation planner at PlanRVA. and the project manager of this analysis. And this project is a collaboration between GRTC, Plan RBA, and includes other regional partners like Henrico County. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're just going to give a quick project introduction for those of us who might be less familiar with it. Give a quick overview of the public survey results that we from a public survey we held back in November to December of 2022. We're going to look at the transit propensity or transit friendliness of the study area, as well as a traffic analysis of the study area, and then a high-level look at the economic impact analysis section of the plan or of the report. And then we'll just go over next steps and get to any questions and comments we might have. This presentation will probably take about 30 minutes. So we can have as much time for questions and comments afterwards. And we do have some representatives from GRTC and Henrico County in attendance if there are any questions that they might be more suited to answer. So to give a quick project introduction, we are exploring a possible western extension of the current Pulse BRT line. This is an initial analysis that is wrapping up this spring 2023, with the next phase to be completed at a later date. Some components of the project included outreach, including the survey that I mentioned earlier, and an analysis on transit propensity, and traffic analysis, as well as economic impact analysis, looking at segment options, and of course the final report, which we'll review tonight. So here's a map of the study area. It is the Broad Street corridor from Willow Lawn west to West Broad Marketplace, just east of State Route 288. It is 10.4 miles in length, and the analysis is primarily on the corridor itself on West Broad Street, but we do include a half-mile buffer to just include that area around the corridor. So the corridor itself is entirely within Henrico County, and the study area is largely within Henrico County, with a bit going over into the city of Richmond, and then Goochland County on the west side. This area is a very busy section of the county currently. There's a lot of community assets in this area, including over 90 grocery stores, 22 schools and educational facilities, and 4 official parks. And of course, this is an area with a lot of major shopping centers and strip malls along the corridor. So it is also a major center of employment and retail. So we'll give a quick rundown of the public survey now. We did have a public survey that was open from November 15th to December 16th of 2022. It was on the MetroQuest platform, and we received 1,378 responses. Our goal was to better understand the priorities, travel behavior, and barriers to travel as the public sees it. We promoted the survey through our partners at Plan RBA, and also within local and regional media, including TV, radio, and newsletters, among others. We also posted flyers at 47 different transit stops on the corridor, or also on the Pulse corridor as well. And we did include in-person engagement on the morning and evening of December 14th with Plan RVA and GRTC staff at Willow Lawn transit stops, giving intercept surveys, flyers, so people can visit the website to get a little more information and just kind of talking to people generally about transit and their experiences. So this survey received over 31,000 separate data points and over 1,000 comments. And we also early on started a project website and purchased a domain name, westbroadbrt.com, and we've been updating that regularly throughout the project. So as one of the main questions that we had in the survey was ranking priorities in the corridor and the study area, and participants were asked to rank their top four priorities out of public transit service, corridor safety, pedestrian accessibility, bicycle accessibility, reducing traffic congestion, property access, and parking near transit. And you'll see on the left-hand side, the highest ranked average is public transit service as a priority, followed by pedestrian accessibility and reducing traffic congestion. We also have this bar chart that includes just all rankings in general, and this is the number of times that a priority was listed in the top four. So it's similar to the average, but corridor safety slightly tops reducing traffic congestion as the number two, or number three rather. As part of the survey as well, we asked respondents what form of transportation they currently use, and right now it's overwhelmingly personal vehicle at 75%. Public transit is at about 36%. We also asked what form of transportation they would use if it was more available. And when we asked this question, those numbers sort of flipped. So 72% stated that they would use public transit if it was more available. And then just 21.8% said personal vehicle. And I just wanted to note also that in the middle of each graph, the taxi, Uber, and Lyft category, there was a notable decrease in that, which may indicate that there's an over-reliance on rideshare services due to current lack of public transit options in this area. We also asked if reliable transportation has ever prevented you from finding or keeping a job. About 22% of respondents said yes, it has. And if reliable transportation prevents you from working now, not having reliable transportation, 6.2%, which is much lower, but still a significant number, stated that lack of reliable transportation prevents them from working, and that 6.2% equates to 85 individuals. So obviously this is quite relevant, since reliable transportation is an essential factor for most employment. When we asked how often respondents use transit, most said rarely or never, followed by occasionally. Third place when you combine them daily and multiple times per day. The third place answer was at least once a day. And when we asked if an extended pulse BRT down West Broad Street would impact how you consider traveling along this corridor, over 75% said it would. And this, just wanted to relate this back to the results earlier that stated that 72% of respondents would use transit if it was more available. So this screen is a little busy. There's a lot of numbers on it, but I was just trying to give a generalized overview of transit support and also opposition that we found in the survey. Now, we didn't come out and ask if you support transit or if you support an extension of the pulse, but we did analyze the open comments that were received. There were over 2,300, and this is how supportive comments, neutral comments, and opposition comments and opposition stack up for each of the sections of the survey. So we see a high of 70% support for when people are talking about their ideal commute. Also other comments, which is essentially at the end of the survey asking if there's anything else you have to add or have to want to mention about public transit on the corridor. And then the high for opposition is in the general comments, and that's just people leaving comments in specific pages, just not really related to a specific question. So as you can see, though, there's high support, even when we're looking at the overall number on the top or on the bottom right. While support is 42%, opposition is only 4.1%, and there's 53% neutral. And we do have the full survey results on the website, westbroadbrt.com, and also all of the comments submitted. So moving into the transit propensity analysis, here is just a map of current transit lines on the on and around the corridor. All of these routes converge near Willow Lawn, making that kind of a major natural transfer point for transit riders. And of course, that includes the pulse that currently has the western terminus at Willow Lawn. And here are just the route numbers over each of the lines. We also looked at equity. So we used a metric called equity emphasis areas. This is derived from Connect RVA 2045, which is our region's long-range transportation plan. So equity emphasis areas are a measurement showing areas with populations that have historically been disadvantaged. So we're talking about people of color, people in poverty, zero-car households, older adults over 65, people with disabilities, and people with limited English proficiency. And within the study area, you can see that there's a bit of a concentration on the east end. Similarly, and this was part of the equity emphasis methodology, but we wanted to look at just low vehicle ownership by itself. So this is households with 1 or 0 cars. Again, sort of a concentration on the east end of the study area. Looking at high transit use, which would be the, in this case, the highest quartile of census tracts, using transit to get to work as a percentage of all modes. There's a bit of a split in the east end of the study area and the west end around Short Pump, in the Short Pump area. So there is high level of transit use in each of these areas, and of course it gets a little less frequent as you go west. We also took a look at the walkability index. This is put out by the EPA's Office of Sustainable Communities. measures characteristics of the built environment that influences likelihood of walking as a mode of travel. So looking at things like intersection density, proximity to transit stops, diversity of land uses, employment mix, and employment and household mix. So this is similar to the walk score, if anybody's familiar with walk score, but this is different methodology and put out by EPA. Activity centers are regional areas with high density of population and employment. So high concentration of housing and also businesses. So there is kind of evenly split along the entire corridor. You see a high concentration around the West End as well, by Short Pump and Innsbruck. And should note that some of these areas, such as the Short Pump area, particularly just east of Route 288, is seeing strong development patterns that will likely change this coverage over the short to medium term. Transit propensity also looked at pipeline development. So this is these are regionally significant development projects that have an impact on transportation and traffic primarily. So when we're looking at residential, that's pretty much developments with more than five units. So we're not going to be showing like individual houses being built or anything like that. But there are significant development projects throughout the region and this study area. And particularly you can see concentrations around Westwood and Henrico, and then Willow Lawn, Innsbruck, and Short Pump. We also did a parking lot coverage analysis. So we looked at non-residential parking lots and parking spaces, not including on-street parking or parking garages. This also doesn't include drive-throughs and storage yards, and doesn't consider the full amount of land dedicated to parking lots. So things like driveways, access roads, stormwater retention. And this footprint is approximate, and the analysis does end at the study area boundary. So some of these parking lots, of course, go over the boundary a little bit, but we just included the area within the study area. So this last one, this is the area around Willow Lawn, moving west towards Parham Road, further west to Innsbruck, and then kind of east part of Short Pump, central part of Short Pump, and then the west end of the county getting into Goochland. And here's an overall view. Hard to kind of see the individual areas, but just kind of wanted to show the wide swath along the whole study area. So parking lots do make up 17% of this corridor. And this corridor with a half-mile buffer is 11.28 square miles, and parking lots cover just under 2.2 square miles. So 17% of the corridor are surface parking lots. So this is an opportunity for future infill development, but also in the shorter term, potential for park and ride lots, especially near ones that are adjacent to pull stations and transit stops. And this layer, along with most of them that I'm showing tonight are visible on the website, westbroadbrt.com. So looking at all of those different variables that we just went over, we came up with this BRT benefit area map. So this uses a very simple binary scoring methodology. So essentially, if a variable listed on the left in the bullet points, if one of these variables were within a particular census tract, then those categories were added together with their respective weights to determine the scores. So the highest possible score would be a 1 in this case, and the weights are listed on the left as well. So going from 20% to 10%. So with those benefits areas scored, we see 2 of the highest scoring tied for 0.9 are on the east side of Broad Street between Glenside and Worcester, and then the lowest scoring, which scored a 0, is on the northwest side of the junction of I-64 and 295. So moving into the traffic analysis section, we looked at, of course, the corridor itself. So including the available right-of-way along the corridor. There are 3 through lanes on the entire corridor. This is a view at Bethlehem Road looking east, and this is fairly typical of much of the corridor. There are 3 through lanes along this entire corridor, except for 2 sections, one eastbound section between Emerywood Parkway and Forest Avenue, and then another eastbound section between Gathering Place and I-64 near Short Pump. And these are both around the 64 interchanges, which complicates things a little bit. There is a divided highway for the entire corridor consisting of a 13 to 14 foot grassy median that narrows down to a 2.5 foot concrete median at turn lanes, providing hardened turn lanes. And trees and other vegetation are in the larger medians west of I-64 and Short Pump. And the lanes themselves are about 11 to 12 feet wide, generally a little more narrow at 11 feet east of Glenside. And this is a VDOT maintained roadway. We also just did a quick analysis of the intersections, major intersections on the corridor. So that would be where one or more cross streets has 2 or more traffic lanes. Posted speed is at or above 25 miles per hour, and or the average daily traffic is above 3,000. So there are, using those metrics, there are 66 major intersections along this corridor, just along Broad Street itself. And the legend you see on the bottom left of the maps, the red are intersections that have totally missing sidewalks. The red with the black outline have partial, crosswalks rather, have partial crosswalks. So maybe 1 to 3 legs of the intersection have crosswalks, and then the black circles are complete. And this does not take into account the quality of the crosswalk, just that they exist. We also looked at crash data. So there were over 5,000 crashes on this corridor, or in the study area rather, from 2018 to 2022. 16 were fatal. There were 110 severe injuries and over 1,100 visible injuries. And we do see fatal crash clusters at Willow Lawn, Glenside, Westland Shopping Center, and Gaskins, as shown in this map. And severe injury clusters in this map at Willow Lawn, Glenside, Hungary Springs, Parham, Gaskins, Innsbrook, John Rolfe Parkway, Short Pump Town Center, and just east of Route 288. So this data supports what we heard from survey respondents when they talked about their perceptions of safety on the corridor, particularly in relation to speeding and aggressive driving. So, speaking of which, the speed limit is 45 miles per hour on the entire corridor, except for about a quarter mile section that extends into Richmond, which is 35 miles per hour. Average daily traffic is anywhere from 23,000 to a high of 70,000. That 70,000 only really exists in a very short section west of the I-64 interchange and Short Pump. And there are no bicycle facilities on the corridor itself. There are some on the periphery and the edges of the study area, mostly in the far west end and Henrico, and there are more being built, but this goes into the first mile, last mile issue of transit, or how people might get to their bus stop from their home or their office or what have you. As for congestion, probably not surprisingly, this entire corridor experiences at least some congestion in the AM and PM hours. Despite that, there is rather strong travel reliability on the entire corridor, except for two small segments. And there are no significant bottlenecks that are regularly experienced on Broad Street. And bottlenecks in this case are locations on the roadway where reported speeds fall below 60% of the free flow speed for an extended period of time. So while there might be slowdowns occasionally or regularly, they don't qualify for bottlenecks. And if you're interested in this, you can look at our congestion management process documents on our website at planrva.org. So as part of the traffic analysis, we looked at some challenges and opportunities, and they kind of just combine them together here, because these are challenges, but also opportunities to improve this corridor. So as I showed earlier with the maps, there is an issue with crosswalks on this corridor. There are only two completed intersections that have 4 crosswalks or full, all legs are covered with crosswalks. 15 are partially complete and 49 are missing. And there are sidewalk gaps as well along the entire corridor, mostly in the middle section, and they're pretty much everywhere in like the Short Pump area along Broad Street, but existing sidewalks are fairly narrow, and they're adjacent to the roadway with no street trees or significant barriers or buffers from motor vehicles. And you can see an example in this image of this gentleman walking by the Cabela and just off Broad Street. Bus stops, shelters, and benches are also severely lacking. And I know that this is something that GRTC and Henrico County are well aware of, and they're in the process of remedying this. But as of right now, only three stops in the study area have benches. And that's at Chantilly Street, Staples Mill Road, and Emerywood Parkway. And 21 stops are not accessible by sidewalk. So that just means that they're simply not accessible for some people with mobility devices or other mobility challenges. And because of the lack of benches at sidewalk or at bus stops, there are a lot of issues of makeshift seating. So this gentleman using a turned over shopping cart for seating is not uncommon to see along the corridor. And for ADA facilities, only 4 stops closest to Staples Mill, and the 3 pull stations comply with ADA standards. And that is essentially 5, the concrete pad 5 by 8 feet. Lighting is also a challenge and an opportunity. There are no street lights on the Broad Street corridor along the roadway at all, though there is lighting from private developments on the periphery that kind of light the corridor a little bit, but usually don't reach into where people on the sidewalk or people walking along the road or traveling along the road are moving. So this definitely influences perceptions of safety and negative views of transit riders by non-transit riders. As shown earlier, there's a lot of parking lots in this area, so maybe some underutilized land in a lot of these spots. Of course, some of these parking lots are of course needed for surrounding businesses, but there is like I said, about 2 square miles of parking lots in this area. Also driveways and side streets. There are 548 driveways, side streets, intersections, ramps, and other major curb cuts just along Broad Street in this corridor, as shown with these little red dots in the map. And these signify a potential conflict point at each of these locations. So just a safety issue to be aware of. And other safety issues, this corridor has been the subject of safety issues that were highlighted in previous plans, such as VDOT's Pedestrian Safety Action Plan and the TPO's Richmond Regional Transportation Safety Plan, along with Connect RVA, the Long Range Transportation Plan. So kind of combining all of that traffic analysis and the transit propensity analysis, these are logical termini locations that are located at Glenside Drive, Worcester Road, and Parham Road. And I just want to note that this is for a minimum operable segment. So that would be a segment that provides the most cost-effective solution for the greatest benefits for the project. And it also must be able to function as a standalone project. So pretty much it's sort of like a phased approach to extending the pulse along this corridor. So that's all to say that this does not mean that one of these locations will forever be the end of the pulse line, and future extensions may be phased after the first extension. But getting to at least Glenside was identified as a need overcome that first I-64 barrier. And there are major shopping centers at each of these locations, particularly Merchants Walk and Westland Shopping Center. And the going into future phases of this analysis would entail finding precise locations for future pull stations. So these dots just kind of represent a generalized area. And turnaround routing was analyzed for these potential locations. So it has been verified that 40-foot buses and 60-foot articulated buses can make turnaround on publicly owned right away. So lastly, we're going to talk pretty quickly, just because this is a pretty dense part of the overall analysis. We're going to talk about the economic impact analysis portion. So this study uses pre-treatment and post-treatment evaluations of economic indicators to assess the impact of the pulse on the local economy. So we do focus on the existing pulse corridor as the primary treatment zone, and we also have these two comparison areas: the West Broad corridor, this study area that we've been showing, and the proposed north-south BRT corridors that are being right now proposed as a ongoing north-south BRT plan development that's unrelated to this. And we also compared these outcomes with Richmond's overall economic footprint. And for anybody who's interested, the study, this uses the difference in differences method to compare changes in outcomes over time between treatments and control groups. For looking at job growth along these areas, the nature of jobs along the pulse corridor changed from low skill and low wage to medium and high skill and higher wage. That doesn't mean that it only experienced increases there, but that was where most of the changes lie. And the pulse corridor itself experienced about a 26% increase in construction jobs within a 1 mile buffer. We did use a 1 mile buffer along with a half-mile buffer for this analysis. And the pulse corridor also experienced about 60% growth in real estate, rental, and leasing jobs. And that's more than double the comparison areas. The pulse also had highest gain in finance and insurance jobs at 68% compared to the West Broad corridor at 55%, and then north-south corridors at 7.2%, and then 4.5% for the economic region overall. And lastly, the pulse corridor had twice as much job growth in accommodation and food sector jobs compared to the other study areas. Looking at land use and land value changes, and higher land use often leads to a shift towards office-based, corporate, and services economy, and also with the decline in manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing sectors. Retail, personal services, and food and beverage sectors are likely to expand as the population in the area grows, and that goes for the existing pulse corridor and any future bus rapid transit expansions. Also, the commercial land use in the pulse corridor increased by 62% compared to 24% on the West Broad corridor, and the north-south corridor areas actually experienced a decline of almost 50%. Value per acre of commercial properties increased by almost 49% along the Pulse corridor, and this is what this chart pictures. And in comparison, commercial properties along the West Broad corridor increased by about 33%, and then 10% for north-south, and then about 31% for the region. And overall, one last point for the land value changes. Properties along the half-mile buffer, so just the half-mile buffer of the existing Pulse corridor, saw an average value increase of $386,000, or about 37% between 2013 and 2023, compared to the modest increase for the rest of the economic region. For real estate development, between 2013 and 2022, the total number of permits issued for new commercial buildings did decrease by about 5%, but there was a significant increase in the number of new commercial building permits issued along the Pulse corridor and the West Broad corridor. The Pulse corridor also had a greater increase in new construction permits, while other corridors focused more on rehab than new construction. And this indicates a potential return on investment along the Pulse corridor following the BRT. And these charts just show the change and the percentage change of new commercial and residential building permits with the Pulse, the current Pulse corridor on the far left, and the West Broad, the WB, as the study corridor next to that. So just a summary of the economic impact findings. Job growth along the Pulse corridor shifted towards higher skilled and higher wage jobs, as I mentioned earlier, particularly in real estate, rental and leasing, finance and insurance, business and enterprise management, and also accommodation and food service sectors. Commercial land use and property values increased significantly along the Pulse corridor compared to other areas of Richmond. The Richmond region, economic region. So this shows that implementation of BRT service can lead to an increased building and rehab activities in the surrounding areas due to increased economic activity, population density, accessibility, and growth potential. So that concludes the quick overview of the draft report. So we are at the near the end of this analysis. The draft report is complete. We will share it on the website westbroadbrt.com tomorrow, and anyone who has signed up for this meeting tonight will get a follow-up email with that information. But pretty much, and there will be one more stakeholder meeting in late May to present the final report after all of the input and changes have been addressed. So for the next steps right now, as I said, we're starting a public review of the draft report starting tomorrow. We do want to hear from you and people who who might be interested in this, or transit riders, or people who live or work or own a business along the corridor. We will be collecting input until May 15th, so a bit over 2 weeks. And then, as I said earlier, we'll have one more stakeholder meeting in May to present the final report. And there will be some more updates to the website, westbroadbrt.com. You can also sign up for email updates there. And then there will be you can view the draft report as a PDF there. But as I said, the information for the draft report will be emailed tomorrow. So there'll essentially be two options. You can look at that PDF on the website and just kind of send generalized responses or responses to individual pages. We also have the option, and this link will be sent as well, of doing an Adobe review, using Adobe Review, which is similar to other review method programs that you might have used in the past. You do not need to create an account for this. You can leave a comment as an anonymous user, or put your name down or your initials or whatever you'd like. But you would just use a pin here to make a comment in an area that you want to make a comment about or ask a question. And then you can also highlight text. If you think that a certain part shouldn't be there, you can strike through or replace it. If you want to draw a shape, I guess you can draw a shape. But like I said, you do not need to have an account made for this. You can just do it as a guest. But we're also more than happy to receive just comments in an email if you prefer that way. So I also wanted to just kind of leave with this quote. That's our transportation status quo has worsened social mobility. A long commute is one of the biggest barriers to escaping poverty. And I think the Pulse has done a lot with connecting us around our region. And I think an extension wherever it might be next of BRT would definitely help the quality of life and economic future of the people who will use transit. So that is my presentation. You can, if you have questions or comments right now, I'd love to hear them. You can also email me at dmotta, DMOTTA, @planrva.org. My email is on the screen, and you can, as I said, keep up with updates and look at the draft report and a web version of this, all this information at westbroadbrt.com. So I will open it up to comments if anybody has comments, questions, anything at all. Let me just check our YouTube live stream. Give it a few more minutes if anybody else wants to speak up. And I know several people are going to be watching the recording of this later on. So again, if you have any questions, please email me at dmata@planrva.org. And you can sign up for updates on this at westbroadbrt.com. Well, I think I do have a question in the chat. Does the report give a recommendation as to the logical termini of an extension? In the beginning, you show 3 possible termini locations. Yeah, right now, it does have all 3 of those locations as kind of a close, medium, and far option. We can include in the final report having like the top choice, if you will, for a termini location, but I think all 3 of those have pluses and minuses to them. And I did want to add that, of course, those areas, the next phase of this study would look at actual sighting locations, especially as it relates to nearby intersections or traffic signaling or any more complicated issues like that. So this is very much a preliminary analysis that doesn't get into that at this moment. But thank you for that question, David. So I think that's all for the questions and comments. So we can wrap this up a little early. I'll stay on the line until everybody's gone if anybody wants to hang back and have any questions or anything, but I appreciate your time and joining us tonight.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.